Hi, everyone. My name is Amondi Aroko. I am an editor at tuko.co.ke. We are the leading digital newsroom in East and Central Africa. So if you know you have business that needs to be hyped within the Kenyan market, we are the right people to talk to. So I'm joined by Atwa Gaba, who is the CEO of Blue Tui Hotel. So I'll ask him to introduce himself first and then tell us what his hotel is all about.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, but this was a great way to break the ice after the lunch, this searching the iPhone. I like that very much. Yeah, my name is Arthur Gerber. I'm based in Germany, the headquarters of TUI. I'm the CEO of TUI Hotels and Resorts. I'm a hotelier, meanwhile 41 years in the industry, almost a long time, and always happy to participate on events like that. So it's always great for me to see similar faces and people knowing a lot of years, but also very interesting to meet new faces, to learn about new things, and to talk to people. This is the passion, what we are here for.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, you've been in business for over 10 years, and I think that is something that your organization and mine that I represent have in common. What would you say are some of the lessons that you've learned that are so pivotal in regards to the future of leisure in hospitality?
Yeah, looking back, especially the question was a bit referring to the development of one of our brands, which is TUI Blue. TUI Blue was a brand developed, meanwhile, 11 years ago, because TUI, as a mother company, wanted to have a hotel brand where the name of TUI sits in the brand. And therefore, they decided to hire me to bring that into life. The target was to find around 50 hotels in the first 5 years. So we did a bit better and a bit faster, then COVID stopped us a little bit, and at the moment we have around 105, 106 hotels in 25 or 26 countries, and we are part of the TUI group, and this was very essential when we started TUI Blue, because TUI, in some part of the world, it's a very well-known company, and it was very supportive for us, because TUI is operating in 150 countries around the world. So I think in 60 countries we run our own DMC, which means we run the destination management companies as well. In the other 100 countries we do that with local partners. For us it was easier finding hotels that we already have had a place where we could link to, because it was part of our own organization. So this was in some parts of the world a bit easier for us to do that. But at the end it's always to find the right people, to find the right partners, to make not too many wrong decisions. For sure you do a lot of wrong decisions, and rely on people and trust people. They want to help you to make that a success. And after all the years now, I think we are very lucky. Also now with the new expansion areas, Africa is one part. We already sit in Africa since many, many years, but we have a lot of development now in Asia, China, Southeast Asia, also in Europe, but some other parts of the world where we haven't been. US and Canada is now on the radar. So that helps a lot to be really part of the big company, consists out of travel agencies, airplane, cruise ships. That helps a lot. Okay. And that helped a lot and still helps a lot.
Okay. I know we all differentiate leisure because it all bottles down to either preference or interest. But I'm curious though, how does place and emotion play into the future of hospitality?
I think that's essential. I think that's not only specifically in Africa. We do a lot of insights around the world. Okay. What do customers like? What do we need to offer for being on the market? And emotions, experience, everybody's talking about it. But at the end of the day, this is what we believe in a leisure market wins the race at the end. Because people are looking not only for bed anymore, they look really for stories. They want to tell stories when they go home. They want to tell stories even during their stay. They post, they have the friends connected. They want to tell everybody that they have maybe a great hotel, but also they did great excursions in the regions. They have seen how local people are living. They have experienced local food and local culture. This is what people want to talk about, and this is something where we play a role. And I explained a couple of times as well, in the average of our resorts, the guests are staying 9 days. This is maybe a big difference to a city hotel where you hardly find guests staying 9 days or 9 nights. Yeah. And if you have guests around 9 days in average with you, you have to offer not only a bed and a buffet. I think we have to offer much more than that to make the guests feeling part of your community, to give your staff a chance to interact with the guests, to let the guests interact by themselves. So this is where we believe, and we see that also in a lot of questionnaires we do, and the guest results, you find it on the net as well. You can check that. This is what people really like, what emotions can bring to their experience of holidays, make them a repeater. And for us, it's always like all the colleagues running hotels, if you are able to make repeater guests, this is the less marketing spend you can do in your life. And they do the marketing for you, give them a good platform and let them write their good things and give them something on the hand to do that. And this is where we say emotion, experience is for us now and even more in the future the key for success in the leisure hotel.
Okay, I like that. Now, you've been in the industry for over 4 decades, right? Now, I'd want to know, among the many global shocks that people have experienced, especially the hospitality industry, what has TUI done so far to ensure that the leisure bit of it is not as affected? Looking at what we're seeing now in Israel and Iran.
Now it becomes political. I mean, what happens in Israel and Iran is terrible. I mean, I'm not here to talk about these politics, but at least every one of us is more or less affected from these kind of things. So we have not only one war in Europe, we have 2. One is lasting already 4 years. We should not forget that. And they must also, do we find a solution? And we as a, let's say, as a tourism company consisting out of hotels, what I mentioned, sure we are affected. Maybe other colleagues from other brands are more affected because they have more hotels, specifically in that region. But for us, to give you a little example, we have still 2 ships. They are Mein Schiff 4 and Mein Schiff 5, each of 2,500 beds. They are empty, yes, but they are still in Abu Dhabi, in Doha. We cannot take them home to do different routings. Fuel is an issue. We have an own air fleet with 140 planes, so which means fuel hedge is an issue. Fuel is becoming more and more expensive, so travel will become more and more expensive. But this is something what other people has to deal with as well. But we learned that we have to have, let's say, systems in place where we are able to monitor what's going on in the world, especially when we have sold package holidays to customers. And the European law, especially also the German law, is quite restrictive for the obligations you have as a company selling packages, which means you're responsible for your guests when they leave their home, going to the airport, and you're still responsible before they are back home, which means, therefore, we need systems in place where we are really able to closely monitor the situations. And this is what we learned also after COVID and after this time. And we invested a lot of trainings and manpower for these things to solve it, to become more and more resilient. But the actual situation shows you never be 100% resilient because things happen and you did not predict it a long time ago.
We cannot talk about hospitality without bringing in the AI aspect in it. How do you think AI is going to affect leisure in hospitality?
Very simple example. We are running a couple of call centers. The young guys in the room, they even don't know what a call center is maybe, but I know what a call center is. There are people sitting on the phone and answering questions where customers are calling in. And you cannot believe that still, I do not know, on a daily basis, thousands of calls in Europe coming into our call centers where guests are asking, I go to Greece tomorrow, how is the weather in the destination? And is my bus ordered? Yeah, exactly. This was what we tackled even 4 or 5 years ago with AI. So this is now done by machines, very easy. So a lot of systems behind the scenes in the back office are already done by AI, and we go to invest more in that. So this helps us to, let's say, to ease processes. And when it comes to the hotels, we do that as well. But in that case, it's not the priority number 1 is to save staff cost. My priority is that we save that time where we, in the past, needed to do manual work and to spend that time for the guests. This is always, for my opinion, the most important thing is because the guests are paying our payrolls, and we have to try to give them the best what we can. And if we find systems, a lot of AIs help us to do that, then we should invest this time to make the guests a great stay, give them a great experience. I think even 4 years ago, we set up a system, it's called Kitro. Kitro is a food waste system, a food waste control system. It works quite easy. You install some cameras in the back of the kitchen. When we have a lot of all-inclusive resorts, which means you serve breakfast buffets and lunch buffets and evening buffets. So there's a lot of food on these buffets. And then the colleagues bring it after service, bring it back to the kitchen, and cameras are filming what you need to throw away due to local law. And then the chef gets directly in report, seeing what it was too much on the buffet for some certain dishes. Maybe, I don't know, he served 10 kilo of cutted tomatoes, and 9 plates were directly go back to the kitchen. And the next day, he will not cut 10, most probably he will cut 3. And maybe he's able to deliver more if the guest eating more tomatoes that day. So this saves a lot of money first, but also a lot of waste. Yeah, and this waste, I mean, it's nothing worse than saving, nothing better than saving waste, and nothing worse than throw away good things which are not, there's nothing wrong with. And this we do meanwhile, I think, in close to 50, 60 hotels have installed that, and this is a great achievement. And if you run a hotel, you know how difficult it is to convince your chef that might be doing something wrong or not right. And if you can show him pictures, and he has to believe what the figures are saying, and then you can get really, really good improvements in that case.
Yes, as we wind up, last question, I'd want to know what are the trends that you're seeing with the future of leisure?
Future of leisure, as I mentioned already, nice destinations, maybe new destinations for international guests, maybe destinations which haven't been on the radar so prominent in the last years. I always take example, it's Zanzibar. If you would have talked to people maybe 10, 15 years ago about Zanzibar tourism, Zanzibar hotels, I would believe that hardly people have been able to give you a picture about that. So meanwhile, we own more than 2,500 rooms on Zanzibar. We send our own planes to Zanzibar because local, authentic experience, coming together with local people and give people a good impression about country and culture. This is for me the future of leisure tourism, and yeah, show foreigners, show them what the country is able to provide, and there also Africa has a big variety of possibilities where people will love to go. And this is by always our aim, that people enjoy what they are doing and interact with local communities, and this helps a lot also local people to get benefits out of this kind of work. At least we do.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ato, for your time.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you so much. A round of applause, please, as they make their way off the stage.